The summer of 1968 was scorching in Red Hollow, Texas, with the sun beating down on the quiet streets and the fields surrounding the small town. Children ran freely through orchards and empty lots, their laughter echoing against the wooden fences and aged brick buildings. Among them were 3 kids, Tommy, age 8, Sarah, age 10, and Michael, age 12, best friends who spent nearly every day together. On that fateful morning, they set out to play near the old orchard at the town's edge, a place that had long been whispered about among locals. But what started as an ordinary day of summer fun would soon turn into a nightmare that the town would never forget. The orchard itself had always carried a strange air about it. Some townspeople claimed the trees grew in unnatural patterns, their twisted branches casting jagged shadows over the ground. At the center of the orchard was a small hill, and beneath it ran a hidden tunnel that had been sealed decades earlier. Children were warned to stay away, told stories about it being cursed, but the thrill of forbidden places proved irresistible. That morning, the 3 friends ran toward the hill, their laughter fading as they disappeared among the thick foliage. When they didn't return by noon, panic set in. Parents scoured every corner of the orchard, calling out their names. Neighbors joined in, combing through the groves, climbing over fences, and checking the nearby creek and abandoned sheds. The sheriff's department was alerted, and by evening, the search had grown into a full-scale operation involving volunteers, bloodhounds, and even state police. Rumors began spreading almost immediately. Some whispered about the tunnel beneath the orchard, claiming it had been used for smuggling or hiding things no one wanted to be discovered. Others told darker tales, hinting at cult activity or strange rituals long buried in the town's history. The children's families were frantic, sleepless nights stretching into weeks. Every noise outside their homes, creaking floorboards, distant footsteps, even the wind rustling through the orchard, was met with dread. Fear, suspicion, and grief mingled in the once peaceful town like a fog that refused to lift. As days turned into weeks, investigators combed the town for any shred of evidence, but the mystery only deepened. Reports of fleeting shadows near the orchard circulated, and townspeople swore they saw children's laughter echoing from nowhere. Flyers were posted, announcements made on the local radio, yet no leads emerged. The orchard remained off-limits, but the tunnel below it became the subject of hushed conversation, a dark secret that seemed to hum with menace. Red Hollow had become a town on edge, caught in the grip of a terror it could neither explain nor escape. Years passed, and the orchard at the edge of Red Hollow grew wilder and more foreboding. Grass and weeds choked the once clear paths, and the gnarled branches of the trees twisted into shapes that looked almost human in the fading light. Most townspeople avoided the orchard altogether, and parents forbade their children from venturing near it. Yet the stories about the tunnel beneath the hill never completely died. Some said it had been built decades earlier as a secret passage for smugglers. Others whispered darker theories, that it was a place where unspeakable acts had occurred, hidden safely from the eyes of the town. The orchard became a place that thrummed with quiet menace, a living memory of the children who had vanished. The tunnel itself had always been shrouded in mystery. Locals recalled seeing a small rusted hatch half hidden beneath the roots of an old oak tree, but none dared open it. Children who snuck close enough to peek inside described a cold darkness that seemed to breathe, as though the tunnel were alive. They spoke of strange sounds, soft whispers, scraping noises, and the distant echoes of footsteps that didn't belong to anyone there. Even teenagers, emboldened by curiosity and bravado, would run screaming back to the safety of the streets. Over time, the orchard became a place of whispered warnings, a symbol of the fear that lingered over Red Hollow long after the children disappeared. The town's adults carried their own unease, the kind that grew when secrets are left unspoken. Neighbors told one another not to talk about the tunnel in front of outsiders, claiming it was safer to leave the past buried. Some even swore they'd seen strange lights flickering near the orchard at night, or glimpsed shadowy figures disappearing beneath the roots of the hill. No one could explain these phenomena, but the fear was enough to keep people away. The tunnel had become an unspoken scar on Red Hollow, a place where the past refused to remain buried and where the line between legend and reality blurred. Occasionally, adventurers or curious teenagers would attempt to explore the orchard, armed with flashlights and bravado. Yet every attempt ended in panic. Flashlights would flicker, tools would vanish mysteriously, and some reported sudden gusts of freezing wind despite the summer heat. Even law enforcement officers, when called to investigate strange occurrences, would leave shaken, their reports describing eerie echoes, unexplained shadows, and a sense of being watched. The tunnel had a presence, and whether real or imagined, It filled the orchard with a tension that made Red Hollow's residents uneasy for generations. Despite its ominous reputation, the tunnel remained hidden in plain sight. Over the years, debris and overgrowth nearly swallowed the entrance, keeping it secret from all but the most determined. It was as if the tunnel itself had been waiting, patient, for the right moment to reveal its secrets. Even as Red Hollow tried to move on, the old orchard loomed silently on the town's outskirts, a reminder that some mysteries refused to fade. The forgotten tunnel became a symbol of unresolved fear, an underground world that promised answers to those brave, or foolish, enough to uncover them. Decades passed, and the Red Hollow case had long since faded from the headlines, becoming one of those unsolved mysteries whispered about only in dark corners of the town. That is, until 2023, when an amateur urban explorer named Jake Lawson stumbled upon something that would reignite the decades-old horror. While wandering the overgrown orchard, he noticed a section of the ground that seemed oddly sunken, almost like a patch of earth had been disturbed recently. Curiosity, and perhaps a touch of recklessness, drove him to clear away the thick roots and debris, revealing a rusted iron hatch barely visible beneath the soil. His hands trembled as he pried it open, revealing the pitch-black entrance to what appeared to be the long-forgotten tunnel. Inside, the air was thick and stale, carrying the faint scent of decay and damp earth. But it wasn't just the smell that unsettled him. Jake noticed small, almost imperceptible objects scattered along the tunnel's edge. They were fragments of children's clothing, tiny shoes, a threadbow doll, a faded backpack, items that seemed to belong to the ages and sizes of the missing children. Each piece looked decades old, yet eerily well-preserved, as if time itself had slowed in that hidden underground world. The sight alone sent shivers down his spine, and he immediately contacted the authorities, knowing this could finally be the lead the town had waited half a century for. Once law enforcement arrived, the orchard became a scene of intense activity. Forensic teams catalogued every item meticulously, photographing and analyzing what they could. The evidence was both heartbreaking and horrifying: worn toys, scraps of clothing, and small personal items belonging to Tommy, Sarah, and Michael. Experts were shocked by the condition of the objects, which seemed untouched by the decay of 50 years. Questions raced through everyone's minds. How could these items survive underground for so long? Were there signs of what might have happened to the children, or who, or what, had hidden them here? Each discovery added another layer of dread to an already chilling story. The deeper authorities explored, the more unnerving the tunnel became. Its walls were lined with mud-stained bricks, some bearing scratches and faint markings that were difficult to decipher. Dark alcoves seemed to hide something just beyond the eye's reach, and faint sounds, creaks, whispers, even the occasional drip of water, echoed from places no one could reach. Some investigators claimed to feel sudden drops in temperature, or the sensation of being watched, though logically the tunnel was just a hollow, underground space. Fear and fascination intertwined as the team realized the tunnel wasn't just a hiding place. It was a silent witness to decades of secrets long buried. By the end of the first day of exploration, the full scale of the tunnel's mystery began to emerge. There were twists and turns that didn't appear on any maps, dead ends that seemed to have been deliberately blocked, and strange artifacts that hinted at human presence, but not just ordinary habitation. Whoever, or whatever, had used this tunnel had left a trace, a breadcrumb trail frozen in time, waiting for someone to uncover it. As the town watched from the edges of the orchard, whispers began circulating. Had they finally found the truth, or had they just begun to scratch the surface of something far darker than anyone could imagine? News of the tunnel discovery spread through Red Hollow like wildfire. Former residents, now in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s, began returning to the town they had long tried to forget. Faces that once smiled in childhood photos were now lined with years of worry and unresolved grief. The orchard, once a quiet, forgotten corner, became the center of attention, drawing both investigators and curious onlookers. For many, seeing the entrance reopened brought back memories too painful to confront. The sound of children's laughter that had vanished, the endless search parties, and the haunting uncertainty of what had truly happened. Families of the missing children were among the first to visit the orchard. Some were hopeful, imagining a miracle, while others feared the worst. Parents who had never stopped mourning their lost children trembled as forensic teams carefully examined each item recovered from the tunnel. Each toy, each article of clothing, seemed to confirm decades of silent fears. The children had been there, trapped in that underground world. Conversations between neighbors grew hushed and urgent as older residents shared stories they had never spoken of publicly, tales of strange sounds at night, and unexplained shadows moving through the orchard. Local historians and journalists quickly dug into Red Hollow's archives, searching for any overlooked documents. What they found was chilling. Old police reports, letters, and diaries mentioned the tunnel indirectly, often dismissed as rumors or minor incidents. One diary described a neighbor seeing children's toys being carried into the orchard at night, though the entry offered no explanation. A decades-old police report mentioned strange symbols scratched into the dirt near the tunnel, but investigators at the time had ignored it as the work of pranksters. The town was forced to confront the fact that the tunnel's dark history had been documented all along, but no one had acted. As curiosity turned to unease, the atmosphere in Red Hollow shifted dramatically. Residents began noticing strange occurrences once more. Flickering lights in abandoned buildings near the orchard, unexplained noises echoing through empty streets, and pets disappearing without explanation. Fear rippled through the town as people speculated. Had the reopening of the tunnel disturbed something that had been waiting beneath the orchard for decades? Children were kept indoors, and some families even considered leaving town entirely. Conversations about Red Hollow, once nostalgic, now carried a trembling edge, as if everyone sensed that something far more sinister than anyone had imagined was awakening. Amidst the growing tension, investigators found themselves racing against time. They realized that the tunnel's significance went beyond a simple missing persons case. Its secrets were entwined with the town's history, hinting at events that had been intentionally hidden. Some locals feared that reopening the tunnel might unleash forces that were better left undisturbed. But for the families of the missing children, and for the town as a whole, ignoring it was no longer an option. Red Hollow was now a place of collective reckoning, where past and present collided, and where the forgotten tunnel had become a focal point for the town's deepest fears. The moment investigators stepped into the tunnel, a chilling sense of dread washed over them. The air was damp and heavy, carrying a faint, metallic odor that hinted at decay. Flashlights cut through the inky darkness, revealing narrow brick-lined walls, cracked and crumbling in places, and patches of soil that seemed freshly disturbed despite decades of abandonment. Every footstep echoed unnaturally, as if the tunnel itself was listening. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, and whispers of the long-lost children seemed to echo faintly through the corridors, sending shivers down the spines of even the most hardened officers. As they advanced, investigators discovered unsettling traces of habitation. Tiny beds fashioned from old boards were tucked into alcoves, and remnants of children's belongings, dolls, worn shoes, and scraps of clothing were strewn throughout. Some items were faded and decayed, while others appeared strangely preserved, almost untouched by time. Alongside these artifacts were bizarre symbols etched into the brick walls, circular patterns intertwined with jagged lines that no one could decipher. The presence of these markings suggested that someone, or something, had deliberately manipulated this underground labyrinth, leaving signs of activity that spanned decades. Further inside, the tunnel twisted and turned, expanding into hidden chambers that had long been concealed from view. The walls bore deep gouges, and faint stains marred the floor, hinting at violent events long buried. Investigators noted an overwhelming sense of being watched. Shadows seemed to flicker just beyond the reach of their lights, and cold drafts whispered through narrow passages with unnatural timing. Every corner they turned revealed more mysteries: secret alcoves, hollowed-out sections, and even remnants of rudimentary tools that suggested someone had lived and worked here undisturbed. The realization began to sink in. This was not a simple hiding place. It had been deliberately constructed to hold secrets that were meant to remain buried. In one particularly eerie chamber, they found drawings on the walls that sent chills down their spines. Childlike sketches, stick figures holding hands, scribbled faces with wide, terrified eyes, were intertwined with disturbing symbols that no one could identify. It was as if the children themselves had left a desperate record of what had transpired, or perhaps someone else had imposed this dark narrative upon them. The investigators moved cautiously, aware that the tunnel's layout could conceal dangers unseen and horrors unfathomable. Every discovery reinforced the sense that this place was more than just an abandoned passage. It was a monument to suffering, secrecy, and something far darker than ordinary crime. The deeper they went, the more tangible the tunnel's malevolence became. The narrow corridors opened into larger chambers with traces of burned herbs, faint stains that hinted at ritualistic activity, and strange carvings etched deep into the brick. It was impossible to ignore the suggestion that some unseen presence had orchestrated events here, leaving behind a trail meant to confuse, frighten, or perhaps even trap those who dared enter. Investigators documented everything meticulously, but with every step, the line between reality and nightmare blurred. The tunnel was alive with history, grief, and unspoken evil, and the team realized that what they were uncovering might be the darkest chapter of Red Hollow's history, one that had remained hidden for over 50 years. As investigators reached the farthest chamber of the tunnel, a heavy, almost tangible darkness settled over the group. Their flashlights illuminated a small, cramped room, and the sight that greeted them made hearts stop. Scattered across the floor were personal belongings of Tommy, Sarah, and Michael: shoes, backpacks, dolls, and scraps of clothing, eerily preserved despite decades underground. But more alarming were the human remains partially hidden beneath piles of debris. Bones, fragile and brittle with age, confirmed the worst fears. The children had perished in this underground labyrinth, their fate sealed in silence for more than 50 years. Closer examination revealed even more disturbing details. Symbols carved into the walls, previously overlooked, now seemed deliberate, almost ritualistic. Strange patterns etched in what appeared to be dried blood hinted at ceremonies or practices far beyond ordinary criminal activity. Burned herbs, scattered ash, and tiny offerings lay in corners, suggesting someone had used the tunnel for dark rituals, perhaps involving the children themselves. The investigators couldn't shake the sense that this place had been a stage for something far more sinister than anyone had imagined, a place where ordinary crime and the supernatural seemed to collide. Each step forward brought new horrors. Faded journals, partially preserved, were discovered tucked between bricks and loose stones. The entries, written in shaky handwriting, referenced unseen figures and strange noises, sometimes signed only with cryptic initials. While the authors of these notes remained unknown, the content suggested that the children might have been aware of their captors' intentions, even trying to communicate their terror in coded ways. The tunnel, it seemed, had been a trap both physical and psychological, designed to isolate, terrify, and ultimately erase its victims. Investigators also noted signs that the children had tried to leave messages or traces for anyone who might come looking. Tiny scratches in the walls formed patterns that resembled letters or symbols, desperate attempts at communication that were almost indecipherable after decades underground. Broken toys were arranged in small piles, as if they had been left intentionally to mark locations or signal something. Every object, every mark, suggested that the children had been fully aware of the danger, trapped in a nightmarish labyrinth with no hope of escape. The weight of this realization pressed heavily on the team, chilling them to their core. The sense of dread in the chamber was almost suffocating. Shadows seemed to move independently of the investigators' flashlights, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed in rhythm with the racing of their hearts. The atmosphere was thick with a lingering energy, a malevolent presence that hinted the tunnel had not yet relinquished all its secrets. Every discovery, from the bones to the ritualistic symbols, reinforced the horrifying truth. This was not merely a forgotten crime scene, but a dark epicenter of terror that had been hidden beneath Red Hollow for generations. And while the evidence had been unearthed, the full depth of the horror that had unfolded in the tunnel remained shrouded in mystery. The revelation of what lay hidden beneath the orchard sent shockwaves through Red Hollow. Families who had long buried their grief were forced to confront it all over again, and the quiet town buzzed with a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief. Former residents, now older and hardened by decades of life, returned to the orchard, their eyes wide with the haunting memories of childhood whispers and lost laughter. For the parents of Tommy, Sarah, and Michael, the discovery was both a tragic confirmation and a new source of terror. They had finally learned the fate of their children, yet the circumstances were far darker than anyone had ever imagined. Local authorities held emergency meetings to discuss what should be done next, but uncertainty prevailed. Psychologists were called in to help the townspeople cope, while investigators continued combing the tunnel for any remaining evidence. Meanwhile, strange occurrences intensified. Shadows moved in ways that defied explanation. Distant whispers echoed through the orchard at night, and unexplained cold drafts seemed to follow anyone who dared to approach the tunnel's entrance. It was as if the town itself had been imbued with the lingering presence of the horrors that had occurred beneath the orchard decades earlier. Red Hollow's history became a focal point for journalists and paranormal enthusiasts, drawing attention from beyond the town's borders. Documentaries were proposed, articles published, and social media chatter grew wild with speculation. Former residents shared stories of odd sightings and eerie encounters from their childhoods, unexplained lights, mysterious sounds, and fleeting shadows, painting a chilling picture that the orchard's evil had never truly left. Some claimed that pets disappeared near the orchard, while others swore they had felt unseen eyes watching them even from a distance. The town's collective imagination, long dormant, was now alive with fear and suspicion. The reopening of the orchard stirred both courage and dread among the townspeople. Some attempted to explore or investigate further, driven by curiosity or the need for closure, only to return shaken and pale, recounting strange occurrences and inexplicable feelings of being followed or watched. Local children were kept far from the orchard, and even adults avoided the area at night. The town began to acknowledge that the horror was not merely a relic of the past. It had been lying dormant, waiting, and its influence might still linger. The orchard had become a symbol of the unknown, a dark scar in Red Hollow's history that no one could erase. Tensions escalated as Red Hollow struggled to process its newfound reality. Families debated what should be done with the tunnel: seal it permanently, investigate further, or leave it untouched. The investigators warned that the dark symbols, ritual traces, and unsettling energy suggested forces beyond ordinary comprehension. Every discovery reinforced the idea that the events beneath the orchard were part of something larger, something that had haunted the town in subtle, inexplicable ways for generations. Red Hollow faced a chilling reckoning. The tunnel had exposed a horror long buried, and while some answers had been revealed, the town was only beginning to understand the depth of what had transpired beneath its streets. As the tunnel was finally sealed, and investigators packed away the last of the evidence, Red Hollow tried to return to a sense of normalcy. But something had changed forever. The orchard still loomed on the town's outskirts, its gnarled trees casting shadows that seemed darker than before. Locals whispered that the laughter of the lost children could sometimes be heard on windless nights, faint and haunting, echoing from a place no one dared enter. Even as time passed, a lingering question haunted Red Hollow. Had they truly uncovered all the horrors hidden beneath the orchard, or was there something still waiting, patient, in the dark? The townspeople knew one thing for certain: some mysteries refuse to remain buried, and some darkness never truly fades. And so, Red Hollow remains a town forever marked by the tunnel's secrets, a place where the past can never be forgotten, and where the shadows of 1968 still creep through the orchards at dusk, whispering the stories of the children who vanished, and the horrors that watched them from below.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.